The reason I would like you to at least get the basics, it's super important to me that when I say, go check me out, that you're able to. Because we're going to come up on something that's going to be a little bit taxing. I'm on something in Psalm 91. It seems like either nobody wanted to deal with it or it was too perplexing. I've only found a few people, one morphologically tagged version of Psalm 91 that actually does something accurately. The rest of the people, I think, just took one translation and followed down the path. And one word, or in this case, one letter, changes the meaning. And there'll be people who, some of you are slightly steeped in some traditions, including the way you have read Scripture or have memorized it. I've done that, where I've memorized something and I've memorized it, and then I've memorized something that it's not even in the book. I heard Dr. Scott used to say something all the time, and I just started repeating it. And what he was saying was a paraphrase of something, but it wasn't a scripture. It was getting the gist. He used to say, no one comes to the Father by the Spirit. And although that's right, the scripture is Jesus saying, by the Son. So I'd walk around saying that all the time, and somebody once asked me, what chapter and verse is that? And I said, I don't know. But if you're going to give out information, such as I'm doing, I have a few motives behind telling you, go check me out. Believe me, if I was worried about my studies or the way I study or the way I treat the scripture or what I'm doing, I don't think I'd invite you to look. I spend a lot of time doing this. And even the minutia of it, the slightest detail, is important to me. So, one motivation behind all this is for you to be able to go and check when I say go check, and I've given you some ideas of some tools that are available. I'll discuss them again tonight to make sure, as we start from the beginning, I'm taking everybody along with me now. The other motivation behind this is I really believe with a few basic tools, just a few. You don't need to, if you want to master the language, go ahead. But I'm telling you, you only need a few basic tools to be able to find your way around through these different books that I'm suggesting to be used. So, what we're going to do is, I've made some fabulous artwork for you. Let's start with the alphabet, and I want to discuss this. The Hebrew alphabet has no vowels. All consonants, 22 letters. And I'm going to try and do this in a way where everybody will not go to another source afterwards and say, well, but some of these people include 2 letters for this and 2 letters for that. The Hebrew alphabet only has 22 letters. So if you buy a Hebrew book or you want to do a Hebrew course online or wherever you find it, don't get confused where people are trying to tell you, well, there's more than one letter of this, and I've tried to start from scratch. So I want you to look at, and I made it big enough, hopefully, so that you can see. And we're going to try and make this available. It's very horrible to look at, but I tried to give you an idea of how the letters are made. In fact, I'll do it on my tablet in a minute. I actually included in this, I've included some letters to show you, for example, where my finger is here. It's this finger I'm looking at, backwards here. All right, so this letter here and I'm showing you what it looks like in its final form. But I have another page that will demonstrate the final form. So I've numbered the letters on top for you. I'm reading backwards from behind the piece of paper. So the numbers are on top. And I've also tried to show you how the letters are made. Now, if you're going to do this at home, let me recommend something. Get yourself some either ruled paper, do it the old-fashioned way. And what I've done, I very poorly used a ruler, which I hadn't done in a long time, and I made my own lines. If you push in and see, I made pencil lines here so that they would all be the same size and a line through the middle, just the way when you learn how to write the English language, the alphabet. So you see, where the middle line is, get yourself some ruled paper so that when you're writing, the middle line, pull out just a little bit director for me, please. The middle line of the alphabet, you can see where it's supposed to be on each letter. As I said, this is my chicken scratch, so I tried to make it neat, but you've got pencil lines and all kinds of things on here. So if you can read this, and we'll try and make it available for you, but I'm going to try and show you, for example, on that first letter. We're going to do this slowly. I told you I was going to do this slowly. We're going to do it slowly. We've got lots of time, folks, right? It's just time. And, you know, if we use up our time, then we'll be in heaven and we'll be speaking God's language with him, so who cares, right? Only time here. All right. So I want you to see the first letter is just one line. You're making one line from top to bottom on an angle. And then if you're writing the way I'm doing it, you've got another leg that goes this way. And you've got, or another arm, and I always make a little curve at the top there. Now you can be fancy and put a little knob there and a little knob there, and then it has a shape to it. But this particular letter, I'm going to try and get you a fine pen here, so I can write underneath it. This word, this letter rather, is pronounced Aleph. I said I was going to do it slow, and it would look, if you were writing out this letter in the Hebrew, believe it or not, it would look, if you were writing out the letter to make it sound, its name, it would look like so. I know this is great for the shortwave radio people. You, my friends who are listening on radio, I'm sorry, but I have not perfected the art of describing the Hebrew letters. So either go to the internet or close your eyes and imagine that it's something. So first letter I've shown you. We're going to do it again. I want you to see the picture of how this letter works. I did a thick marker here. Whoops, we'll give you a thick marker. Marker, all right. So one line down, and then we've got a second line. So line from top to bottom, and number 2, that next line, and I'll keep it simple for you. All right, I'm going to change, get you a pencil, and it would be like this. So one line, that first line is going this way, the second line goes this way, and the third line goes up. This is not equivalent to A like our alphabet A. And our alphabet would be a vowel. There are no vowels present. Now, I want you to picture something for a minute. I want you to picture, if we were, let's pick a scripture here. Let's pick Psalm 91. Let's have some fun with it to show you why you've got to change your frame of reference as you're going along with me, and we're doing this together. Let's see. I'm going to try and write this way. So Psalm 91, I know you're going to love this example. For you people who are radio, I am writing part of verse 1, and I am deliberately leaving a few letters Wow, this is kind of difficult. Now, whoops, I almost did it. I almost did it. I'll see if I can get through this. You know, I think kids today, whoops, I almost did it again. Kids today would be able to get through this because they text. And Lord only knows, but you get the point. So if you were reading Hebrew without the vowel points underneath, which we will get to, you'd be looking at the consonants like I just placed at the bottom of this page here. In English, no vowels. And I want you to really get that picture, why it is imperative that you not only see the alphabet and understand it is strictly consonants, but then the vowels that are added, different than English. The value of a vowel in the English language obviously fills in the blanks for us. We know this would be he, that, dwelleth, in, the, and so forth, would complete the word. But in the Hebrew, the vowel, whatever vowel may be placed under a letter, will not only complete the word, but it may in fact change its meaning. And that's why we need to kind of approach this with a different set of glasses. So, back to our alphabet. I see if you're trying to write on a ruled page, this could be very interesting as well when I do this. This is going to be very beautiful, folks. Wow, the straightest lines you've ever seen. Is that musical notes? All right. Let me get my marker here. All right. So we've done the first letter, Aleph. And as I said, it is not equivalent to A. It just, for value, for sound, it is as if you're opening your mouth and going, ah. Like, ah. I know you can all do that. All right, next letter we have, and I'm going to try and show you again. You start with one line that goes like so, and one line across the bottom. And I'm going to give you a little, what I call a little butt. Just something that says, I've got something back there. It's not too much, but it's a little something, all right? And this letter is the equivalent right now, the way we're looking at it, it would be the equivalent to our letter B. It's too thick. So if you were trying to figure out, somebody asked me, when it has a dot, when it doesn't have a dot, because it's very confusing. You're going to find as you thumb your way through some of these helps, some of the people have taken the liberty to sometimes not put a dot, sometimes put a dot, and it becomes rather confusing to know, is it B or is it V? Because the same letter can be our English letter B equivalent or V, like Victor equivalent. So let's do this letter one more time to show its form. One stroke. I know this is going to be beautiful. One stroke that goes all the way from this curve, and then the bottom part right there. So I use my pencil, and we're doing one line. I'm going to make this available. Please do not think that this is artwork. It looks like a child did it. Mind you, could be worse things. I think there are some, by the way, there are some king's kids that are learning Hebrew, and I'm getting the samplings of it. It's very interesting. Just interesting. All right. So let me go from this second word, that's right on the bottom, how we would pronounce this. And it's very important. As I wrote Aleph, underneath this one, giving you the sound. Does not mean that this would be the way we would write it in English, but this word bet, if you were a French person, it might sound better. Bet, they have a word like that. beast, or stupid. All right? Bet or bait. So it can be pronounced either way. And if it is being pronounced as a V, like Victor, vet. You're really just saying like vet, like doc for animals, vet, with a little bit of an H sound to it, vet. So let's write out what this looks like for you, because I want you to see the words as they're being spelt out will actually help you to learn the alphabet and pronounce and see for yourself what's going on here. All right, here I've spelt out this word for you here. So you can see, I want you to see how it would be pronounced, how it is spelled, how we would write it. And I'm going to stop on my B and V to go to a second page I've produced for you, which looks kind of freaky as well, but I made it large enough so I could hold it up to show it to you. So when the B appears, when this form that we've just done appears with a dot in the middle, it's B like boy. So with the dot, B like boy. Without the dot, it's V. But if you're trying to buy a grammar book, it is not my problem. But some have said, well, how come sometimes they have two B's, or it says two times? Most of the grammar books will assume, I said this to you last week, that you have some foundation. They're not treating this as you're just starting out and you don't know. So you'll see one person over here that says Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, and some will not have it. So what I did for the alphabet this evening is I only used one. Put one letter here, because we've now learned that with the dot it's a B and without the dot it's a V. So I'm only counting it as one letter, and indeed, if you are a true grammarian, you will only find that it is counted as one letter, not bet, vet, which is number 3. It's just 2. So Aleph, 1, bet, 2. All right, you get the picture. So I want to do this with you. I want to be able to take the time, because this is how simple it is. With this alphabet, with the letters that you need to know that change their sound, and with the letters that are final form. I know it's large, but we have a tablet problem here. So there's not enough tablet or not enough hands. So with these 3 pieces of paper, you're at least able to identify all of the alphabet. And if nothing else, you would be able to take your piece of paper from Psalm 91:1, for example, and you could find the first, because Hebrew is always reading this way. We're starting with that little small yod, and you'd be able to look here and find where the yod is, knowing how to pronounce it, what value it has as a letter. So here we have, for example, the first word of Psalm 91 and verse 1. We have Yeshuv. There is no dot inside the form of this letter, so it is vet. And then some of you are going to go look in the lexicon and go, but they put a dot in it. There's grammar rules we'll learn later. But I'm just telling you right now, with these pieces of paper, with just these few, learning how to pronounce and look at and identify the letters and the vowel points. Let me just tell you one other thing, because I unloaded everything on you thinking, my brain says, I think after 26 or 27 languages, I'm speed dialing, all right? So I'm going to simplify the vowels for you as well. We're not going to do them tonight, though. I don't want to do them. I want at least the alphabet to be clear so everybody says, I got it. There's no We're in the 20-mile-an-hour zone here. It's not the freeways, okay? So we're going to do the next letter. I want you to see how we would write it and how it is going to look. Let's go to the big marker here, the thick one. There's 3 letters on here only. Not doing too good. All right. So start at the top, and you work your way down. And I do this one stroke this way, and I actually do the other stroke backwards. That's the way I do it. Now, on my piece of paper, I show the arrow going the other way, but I look at it, and I think if you want to have an imagery, you're looking at what I call, this is a pair of shoes at the bottom. Think of that. Listen, this is the way I learned Ethiopic. You remember I used to make jokes when Dr. Scott was doing Ethiopic, and I'd say the man is smoking a pipe and he's kicking the other guy in the butt. But that's the way I actually began to identify some of these things, by using these small helps and saying, oh yeah, there's the heel right there. There's the shoe. That's a gimel. That's a G. That's a gimel. So let's write it again. Let's do it again. Same thing. We have this line that goes down, and just like that. Now, interestingly enough, this is another one of those letters that sometimes takes a dot and sometimes doesn't. So we're going to give a belly button to the first one. And we're going to spell this out for you. So gimel, and gimel, yod, mem, and lamed. And I'm putting the points underneath. All right. And if we were going to write it in English, I want you to think of a word that should be really familiar to you. You know, the gimlet-eyed lobster? It has that sound to it, except it's gimel. So it should be, I'm writing this phonetically. So don't say, well, this is the way it's spelled. I would say gimel. Now, I want to make clear, because if you go to a textbook, they may be spelling these differently. I'm spelling this like this for you so you can see, if you were to pronounce it, how it's going to be pronounced, how it's going to sound. So, as I described to you this first letter with the belly button, the bet, the B, versus the V, these actually, for G, gimel, they both represent the G sound, except this first one here with the belly button, it represents the sound like great, G. And the one without represents the sound like aghast, a GH sound. Now, a lot of these, or ghost, but a lot of these are, you have to remember, we're dealing with a foreign language. So some of these sounds are not even common to us in our speech. We have something akin to it, but not quite. If you are a student of modern Hebrew, you will find that a lot of the letters that I'm describing with or without dots have become very ambiguous. They're almost not concerned with the hard pronunciations anymore. So what we are studying right now is biblical Hebrew. And if you're getting a textbook, some of the textbooks will say classical Hebrew, some will say biblical Hebrew. And somebody said, can you recommend a book? And I've tried to tell you this many times over. No. I wish there was a book I could recommend, but no. And the problem is, I think I have every book known to man on the Hebrew language and the how-tos. And everyone may have some benefits over here, but they've got so many downfalls. Assuming, for example, once you get into verbs, there is an assumption that you will know automatically how to conjugate and translate what they've conjugated. Therefore, there's no need to put it in English. If you've ever bought one of those books, they conjugate the verbs for you, but they don't tell you, okay, translate what that means. into English, please. So the idea is, no, I can't recommend. There are plenty of great Hebrew scholars. Once you get the basics, you're free to go navigate and search out those tools, knowing you have tackled the worst part. Now, I'm not going to get into severe. There's all kinds of grammar laws, just like we have grammar laws in English for the English language. I'm not going to get into those. We may touch on those for other reasons to make a point on something, but the whole point is to get the basics down pat, go through the alphabet, show you how you would, for example, show you how to get numeric value, because if you're reading a Hebrew codex, for example, like the wonderful copy I had of the Aleppo Codex or the Leningrad Codex, there are no English numbers, although the Aleppo cheats and they have it typed on the top of the page for you, but other sources will not. So you'd have to know the numeric value of each letter to be able to find your text, your chapter and verse. So we'll touch all of those. My earnest desire is that you'll get your own Hebrew book, or you're going to make your own book with all the stuff I'm giving you of all the Hebrew from Psalm 91, and you'll pick that apart backwards and forwards, look up the words, and two things will happen. You'll find that learning Hebrew is not as hard as it looks, and the other thing is I think you're going to fall in love with God's Word even more. When Dr. Scott told me that, I kind of went, but I already love God's Word. How can you love something more? But you can't. So, and this is just another dimension, another doorway to just wiggle your way in there and find, wow, there's a lot more depth here. So we have 3 letters so far. I'm going to do the next one down below. You say, wow, there are 22 of these? We're going to sit through the 22? Yes. Because I really want you to see, and then with this tool and with this handout, I think this is a really good starting point. So we have Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, Gimel. They are pronounced the same way. Next letter, Dalet. Now, this, as I said, we have one line that goes across and one line that goes down. And I'm going to try and give you just a little bit of an edge right there so you can see that this is indeed a sharp, crisp line. Why? Because this letter will be confused sometimes with another letter that is curved. And I've exaggerated my R's for you so that you can see it's an R. I just did an R for you right here. It looks like a D. When you read it in the textbooks, it will look like this. Just a little bit of a curve. So you'll have to really look for the corner right here, that nice crisp angle that tells you that's a D. All right, so let's do it again. We've got one line that goes straight and the other line slightly underneath going down. This letter, Dalet, and we're going to write it out for you again. So, De, Dalet, Lamed, Dalet. All right, so put the vowel points for you. I know it's a thick pen. And how I would write this phonetically for you to pronounce this. Think of, it almost sounds like if you were from another southern, instead of saying darling, it has that same, but you're putting a T at the end, Dalet. Dalet, like darling, but it actually has a let at the end. So I'm writing these out. That will not appear like that in a textbook. This is for you. I need to repeat that several times. Somebody say, well, you said that's the way you write it. No, that's the way I want you to pronounce it. Next letter. This one is the $1 million trickster. It will trick you every time. So this letter is called Hey. Hey, how you doing? Never mind. All right, one line, go down. Now you must leave a space right here. So, why, oh why? Let's do this in another color. So, this space must occur for this letter to remain hey. I wasn't talking to you. All right, let's do it again. So, we have one line, and I'm doing double because of this very difficult marker to navigate. One line, and then we go straight down. In fact, if you were looking, you'd see that a lot of the letters have very simple shapes to them. So this one, straight across and down. And then directly beneath, but not attached to the other side, we have this line. You leave that space. It's necessary because there's another letter in the alphabet that looks exactly like this one, but there's no space. And if you don't leave that space and you're trying to write the word, for example, Yahweh, and you don't leave a space, you're going to be saying something that even just to pronounce, it just not going to work. So I did that one time, by the way. Dr. Scott asked me to go write something on the board, and I think I did it all in front of you, too. I closed it, and he said, you forgot to leave that little space open. That little space makes the difference. So remember that little space, and if you want to help, I always have helps for each one of these letters if it's something difficult. This particular one, as you're writing it, you need to remember it's the name is hey, like hey, stop right there. Don't finish the letter, all right? Or you're going to be in trouble, all right. So hey is written out like this, simply. Looks like that in Hebrew. And should sound exactly like hey, or hey. So depending on the emphasis, but you get the idea. I need to get a new page, so let's get a new page. We want to save this one. All right, new page. Wow. All right, that's impressive. That actually did it right. That's what I meant was impressive. All right. So far, we've done 5 of the letters. Here comes number 6. I'm going to help you to remember this letter. I know you're never going to forget this one. So this one is Vav. And I want you to think of a golf stick, upside down iron. It's got a little bit of a iron shape to it, upside down. If you stand the golf stick the wrong way, right? And it's just a simple, really just a little slant, and then you're heading downward. And remember, I drew those lines. Let's try and make some nice lines here. I'll make them in a different color. All right. It's going to be beautiful straight lines. See what I told you? Woo! Wow, those are nice straight lines. But if you were really using straight lines at home, maybe some of you took too much communion already. I'm not quite sure. All right. So what we have here is just one line that starts down, and it's just one line. This single letter is extremely important because in the Hebrew, it is used so much primarily for conjunctions, the conjunction and. You've heard me say, you've heard Dr. Scott say, the Vav conjunction. It's used, it's a very unique tool. But I'm going to help you to remember this particular this particular letter. It is letter number 6. And sometimes it is pronounced Wav or Vav. But I'm going to help you to remember this being the 6th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Somebody asked me, and you're all going to go, oh boy, but somebody asked me about the mark of the beast, out 666. And I said, listen, I have my own theories, and I tell you when they're theories and ideas. And I don't I don't say this is doctrine or this is Bible. I say this is theory. It's an idea. I find it interesting that the numerical value of the Hebrew letter Vav is 6, and if you have Vav, 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 that's W, W, W. I just find that very interesting. It's a great way to help you remember now. I'm sure you're never going to forget the value, its number, and the letter, because it really does usually translate as a W. So if you're of the German pronunciation, you may pronounce it differently, but I'm calling it a Vav. That was a little bit of everything in there. All right. So just simply put, and I think we can just, safe to say, put the letters here. It looks just like that. Pretty simple. V, right? All right. Now the next letter is a little bit more taxing. It is probably one of my least favorite ones to write, because sometimes when I do this, I think it either looks like a dead mushroom or it looks like something that just shouldn't be, but it is. So I'm going to try and fill this in the blanks here. You make one kind of slightly curved line, and then a straight line right in the middle. Looks a little crazy. Let's do that again. So we start at the top. It's like having a little hat, a little sombrero or something, not quite. And then a line down the middle. And this letter is called Zion. Not to be confused with Zion, Zion. Although if you were trying to spell Zion, this would be the first letter of that word. So we have simply for Zion, I'll spell it out for you. This is also going to help you to see how the alphabet works together. We have Zion, Yod, and the long form, because it's a final letter of the N. Zion. And let's get pencil over here. So we had one stroke going this way and one stroke going this way. And you can see that the stroke is right there down the middle of the hat. So that's what that looks like. And I think I'm going to stay with this thinner. It's not that thin. All right. Next letter. You're going to like this one. This is the one where you all get to clear your throat a little bit. All right. One line. And right at the top of that one line, we're making a door. It's a door. Looks like a door. We'll give you a little bit of a ledge right there. So one line down, one line straight across. It's perfectly straight, and I cannot stress this enough, this side of the letter, the left side of the door, is straight, not curved. Now, I want you to see the difference between hey. Hey looked like this. Hey, my pen's not working. Hey looked like this with that open space right there. Open space. Chet. Boy, that's just a tough letter to say. If you have a cold, it's not. But if you have to clear your throat, it's not. It's kind of that's what happens. That's how that letter is made. Chet. So let's do that again. One line down and one line that completes the doorway. And let's spell this for you too. Let's write this out. So we have Chet, Yod, and a T at the end, Chet. And if we were writing this is a challenge. We do not, in the English language, we do not possess anything that sounds like this. The closest thing to this is the sound of character, but that's still too K-sounding. The CH still sounds like a K. So this particular, if you want to get technical here, it's something we don't possess. So think of the ending of Bach, like Bach, Chet. It's almost a roll at the back of your throat. You almost have to make something move back there like you're clearing your throat. It's attractive, ladies, I know, but your husbands will say, I'm learning Hebrew, don't bother me. All right, one stroke this way, and you can do 3. Do it in 3 parts. So up, across, and down. Next letter in the alphabet, I said this is going to be slow, but I think it'll be worthwhile. This is an interesting one. This is what I call the baker's hat. Now, this is going to be ugly. Whew. This is a real beauty. What I just did here is just beautiful. All right. So this letter is called tet, and it is the value of a T. I should go back and say, let me go back to the beginning of this line here. Value of va or wa, value of z like zebra. Het, we don't have an equivalent, so it's just the way I said it. Value of this letter tet, T, T like Thomas. And depending on where it is and where it's placed will determine its sound, because I will write, if you are in fact a French person, it may sound a little bit like head, tête. But phonetically, let me put the H in here for you, tête. All right? So the way you want to do this is, and it's one of my ugliest letters, I have to tell you. This is not pretty. But I start with making one line in, like I'm making a baker's hat. And it looks like a heart, kind of. That one looks more like a heart. Then I just add that line right there, and that says, I'm a T, kind of. Actually, it looks like a bent nail. Looks like somebody messed with that nail, and it's not looking too good. But you can see the form of this. So you've got, it just curves around. And in fact, we probably need to do this one more time, because this should actually be curved in slightly more at the bottom. It should have a little bit more concave. Let's just take that up. Oh, the beauty of erasers. All right, so it should just slightly be more concave. There we go. That kind of looks more like, looks mean now. All right. So we'll write this out for you. There's my baker's hat. And you can begin to see, we're going to be writing all the letters of the alphabet as we spell out the letters as well. I think we're getting along pretty good here. Let me erase this. We'll go to the next letter, number 10. We're almost halfway there, almost. All right, next letter, and this one is the tricky one. That's why I said make yourself a lined, ruled sheet of paper, because if I was using the space given to me on a lined, ruled, you would need to see where this, see my very straight lines here that I'm doing for you. You would want to see where this falls on the line. It should be in the line, by the way. Oops, we just erased the line. All right. So pretend that the line is still there, and your yod should not be more than half of the rest of the letters. It usually is even slightly shorter, but it should not be more than that. If it's bigger than that, it's not a yod. And let's write out it should just sound like that, yod. Yod, right? It's a street name, a street caller. Yod. Don't forget the D. All right, that's what it looks like, yod. Okay, let's do it again one more time. So it just can curve a little bit. Sometimes you'll see me write the yod and it just looks like this. I'll just do it like that. Either one of these is perfectly fine, and as you read through the Hebrew, certainly what I've written out for you out of Psalm 91, you will see the form of it. There's no other letter that looks like that. You can't miss it. All right. Next, this is a tricky letter because it looks like something real simple, and it is. But here we go. So it looks like a C backwards. So we would just be doing what I just did right here. If you were writing with a normal pen and not this thing, it would just be like you're writing a backwards C, just one stroke going around. Now here's the $1 million idea. I did this for you so you could see this letter looks like this. This letter is called kaf, or it sounds like cough, actually, like cough, but it's kaf. It is like this in the initial, like if it begins a word, or if it's in the middle of a word, but if it appears at the end of a word, if it's the last letter in the end of a word, it will appear like this. It'll look like a D with a long body. So this is where you learn about the letters and their different, what is called initial, middle, and final. Hebrew has this. Arabic has this. There are other Semitic languages, such as Aramaic, or rather Syriac, that have final form letters. So this is not just unique to Hebrew. A lot of the Semitic languages, if you're going to look up languages, they will show the alphabet. It will be the initial letter, middle or medial, anywhere in the word will appear and look like this, and the final form will look like this. So it's just like a D, but with a long leg that goes far beyond the ruled lines of your paper. And it's okay. This is one of the times where it's okay to go beyond the lines. Just thought I'd tell you that. All right. So you can see it's really just like a D. One line this way, and the other line that comes down goes far below the line. And it doesn't have to go super far, but you can see it has to be long enough so we know it is indeed not a D, and dips down probably at least another half value. So if you see the value of one line, two line on ruled paper, it would be at least the value of another line, if not a little bit more. And I'm just showing this to exaggerate for you so you can know. So this word, this letter rather, is one of those letters that also gets a belly button. Oh boy, now you type 3 different things with this letter? Yes. So, but it doesn't have as many problems. So we'll do the belly button letters. Let's just get through the alphabet. We'll do all the belly button letters on one page coming up. How's that? So let's write out what this looks like. It's pretty simple. This is a new letter we haven't seen yet. We will see it soon. And I'm going to write out what it should be pronounced as, kaf. But it sounds like if you were from New England and you said, I got a cough. Just think of it that way. I got a cough. Okay? All right. Next letter. Number 12. Only 10 more to go. Next letter. This is actually my favorite letter to write. I like it because I get to go outside the lines above. This one is called lamed. So, I always think when I write this, it's kind of like a 7 and a 1 on the top. Let's do that again. That was kind of fun. One line, go in, and then go down. You've got to have that curve. I'm not really sure what that looks like, but it's a 7 with a 1 on top. That's exactly what it is. All right. For the benefit of those who want to see that motion, it's one line, and then that line that curves in. This letter, lamed. Lamed. And we'll write it out for you. You have the vowel points, I'm including them as well. And you're going to start to recognize some of the letters as we go. One more. Actually, there's a lot more than one more, but it sounded good to say that. All right, let's go to new page. New page. Hopefully these will all be saved. This fantastic artwork here. All right. Next letter, this is called mem. One line, and one line, and one line, and one line. I'm giving you the simple form. My fancy picture over here looks a little bit prettier. Let's do that again. It's kind of a slightly curved line, just slightly curved. We'll give it a curve. Not that much curve. All right, one line that goes slightly curved. Then we have another line that's slightly curved. And then we have this straight line. But I want you to notice something. I'm leaving this open. Remember, I just finished talking about initial, middle, and final. When this letter, mem, occurs at the beginning of the word, in the middle of a word, it remains open. But if it occurs at the end of a word, it will be closed. So, you can always recognize if this is at the end of a word, there's no opening. You'll know that's the final form. Now, this is a very crucial letter to recognize because it looks a little bit, in block printing, it looks a little bit like another letter. It looks a little bit like, as its closed form, it looks a little bit like another letter we're going to see in a minute, Samik. You say, well, how does that look the same? Well, when you're reading it in the Hebrew Bible, they make it look the same. It's pretty close. So you're looking for the curve here and this hard angle at the bottom right, which tells you I'm an M. I'm not an S. Don't confuse me. All right. So mem is, and this is wonderful, it's a demonstration. Mem, this is how you spell mem, and it shows you the first one is open and the second one is closed, M-M. It's a demonstration all in itself. And if we were writing it, I hate to say this because a lot of these, for some reason, have the capacity to be French words. Mem. But I don't want to give you the E because I don't want it to be French. So, mem. M-E-M. Mem. You see double M there. All right, here's the next goodie for you. I know you're going to like this. The next one is nun. And I have fun with this letter too. So, nun looks like this. Just kind of small, not too much room there. Remember back there we saw at the beginning, I'm going to write this, nun. Nun. I don't want you to say noon. It's not noon. It's nun. At the beginning, we did the letter G. I don't want you to confuse G, gimel, with nun. Why? Because G is wearing a shoe. All right? Nun is not. So be careful that you don't confuse the letters. Now, this particular letter, and let's spell this out for you, have N, nun, have a Vav with a belly button, and something really interesting happens in this letter and word. We have the initial N, as I just placed it here, but then this word also provides you the final form of N. So N, nun, in its initial or middle If it appears at the beginning of a word, like this, it'll look like that. And if it appears at the end of a word, it'll look like this, with that long leg. So let's draw. Let's go to see if I can make some rather, wow, that was not a straight line. All right. So, final form of nun will look like this. The leg comes down. Just feel free to, now these are not nice, pretty lines here, but you understand, small and then straight. There's nothing curved about it. I want to make sure that you don't think mine is curved. It's straight. Okay? Now, what's interesting about this in its long form, I want to point these out because these are things that can be confusing, is you might confuse this final form with the Vav. You see I just circled the Vav in the middle of nun? But you know how you will know them apart. The Vav always finishes on the line. It never goes below. Okay? So if you were writing this out here, I'm going to do something crazy. I'll erase it. But a Vav would be this, just like that. We'd have just that. You would know the difference between a Vav and a nun in its final form because the Vav stops right here above the line versus the final form of the N that descends below. Hopefully that's clear, and I've just broken the lines. All right. Okay, here we go. More, number 15. This is what I said, don't confuse this letter, mem, with this letter, samek. Now this one, I always say, this is a guy who's got a bad comb-over, all right? Just think of it that way, really. See, look, I could put a face in there. All right. Guy who's got a bad comb-over, all right? So you're making this kind of circle look, and then the line goes right over. He's got a bad comb-over, I'm telling you. So we have samek and mem. And here's that. Remember I said we just did cough, the final cough? So you're getting to see the letters at work as we do the alphabet together. Samek, it should sound samek. Don't think sandwich, but think samek. It's almost the beginning of the sound that you would say when you say sa, as in sandwich, but it's samek. I hope this is clear because I always try and find things that sound like something, but I'm giving you what it should sound like right here, samek. Number 16. This is a fun one. Ayin. Kind of looks like a Y. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put a little tail right there. And if I really want to get fancy, I'll put some knobs over there just to make sure that everybody knows. It kind of looks like me saying, I'm here. Right? I'm here. But it's not a Y, and it's not a vowel. So a lot of one of the biggest mistakes that we'll probably encounter when we do translation is people think, well, you just said that this letter is called ayin, like Ryan, ayin, but it does not have a vowel value. These are all the consonants. So please keep that in mind. Let's do the letter again just to make sure. So we have one line like that, and the second one comes down, and oops, curves just a little bit. Like I said, sometimes if you want to get fancy, you could put some little dots there that says, I'm not a Y, I've arrived. Okay. And we'll also write it out for you. So we have here ayin, yod, and long nun, final form. Okay? Next letter. Number 17. This is an interesting one. You start with a little line, and I probably need to draw some terribly crooked lines for you to show you where this must sit. So forgive again. I know these are the most beautiful straight lines you've ever seen. All right. Here we go. So let's do this. Let's do this again, and we'll pretend that these red lines are equidistant and equal and straight, all right, just for the sake of imagination here. So it's just like that. I'm giving you the easiest way to make this letter, just like that. Sometimes when I look at this letter, I think of a Greek key, some of those designs, and it helps me to kind of see the form of the letter. Now, you'll see on my piece of paper, I've made it fancy. I've given it a little inlet and a little lip there because in some of the manuscripts, that's exactly the way it'll appear. They'll put a little part here, and they'll give a little squiggly there. But you can recognize this letter. And this is another one of those letters that is only counted as one. We said this letter here, this is number 17. On our, as we go count down to 22. This letter, with or without a dot, will change its value. So I'm telling you now, we'll go to another page where we'll do these letters, but I did it for you here. We've already seen the B with a dot, B without a dot, V. The G, the gimel with the dot, G, gimel without ga, a D with a dot, as in dog, D without has a DH sound, which we don't even have anything to compare it to, so I just want to leave it alone for right now. When we encounter it in a word, we'll pronounce it together. The kaf, the one that you had the kaf, with the dot, its value is king. Without, bach. The letter we just did, with the dot, P, pretty, P. Without, the value is F, fun. So with the dot, boy, this is a beautiful letter right here. I just really damaged this poor letter. It's never going to be the same. You need to give it some cosmetic help here. All right. So with the dot, it has the value of a P, and without the dot, it has the value of F. And you're going to find, if you are studying Semitic languages, again, this is very common. Hebrew, Arabic, Syriac, they share the same problem. There are letters that they have to bring and import. An F, for example, in this language would not be natural, but the P is. And sometimes you'll see people say this, what is being used as an F, will also be translated PH. So it has a different value than just the plain old P for pretty. But actually, the name of this particular letter is quite simple. It's called P. Just P. Let's put a dot there. P. Get P. All right. I don't know that you needed that. But wait, there's more. This letter also changes in its final form. In its final form, so we have with the dot, P, without the dot, F value. Now, final form, if it appears at the end of a word, it will look like this. And we're going to draw what appears to be, at first, a kaf, except we're going to do something to it. We're going to add this tail right here. So you can see basically what happens in the final form. It maintains this curve. And let's get rid of this. I did this to be fancy. I don't want to confuse you. It maintains its curve, but continues down, straight line, below the line. And you'll know whether or not it has a dot or not. It may or may not have a dot. That will depend on other factors. But at least now you have the final form of this letter. All right, I think we're ready for more. Okay, next letter. This one's kind of cool. Tzadi. I'm going to do it the way it's supposed to be, not the way I normally do it, because I've developed my own bad habits over the years. Tzadi. So, normally when I do this, I'm going to try and do it without thinking. I do this. Ooh. I'm not even sure what that looks like. Does that look kind of close? No, it's going the wrong way. So, that's the way I normally write it, because that's the way I would write it, but the right way to write it is this way. You're making a slight line, you go straight down, and now you're going to curve backwards. And one arm comes back up. There's your tzadi. And I know you know this letter. I'm positive that you know it. Look, I just did it again, see? Except I'm not going to correct that. I'm going to erase it because I can. All right. It's very liberating to be able to use this eraser, I'm telling you. All right, here we go. So now it's proper. So, tzadi, and the value of this letter, its phonetic value, its sound. We don't really have too much like this in the English language, but the closest would be pronouncing ts or tz, ts. Ts. Even may carry a little bit of a dental, not labial sound, so ts. I know you all want to do that. You want to do it? Ts. So, this particular letter also has a final form to it. Let's move this down a little bit and create just a little bit of space. Let's see what the final form looks like. The final form looks like this. One line that starts, and we're going to go all the way down, about as long as that one. I probably exaggerated a little bit, and up. So you can see this is the final form. Let's keep it so that the final forms are all about the same length. This is the final form. So you know when this appears at the end of a word, tzadi appearing at the end of a word will have a long leg. It's not curved. Curved, straight, final form. Almost there. I think we can make it through the rest of the alphabet. I think we can do this. I have a feeling. All right, number 19, almost there. This is one I certainly like to write because it looks like a P, but it's not. It's called kof, not cough and not calf. Well, it's an interesting thing. First, let's get an idea here. We did this shape that does look like a P, but I want you to note two things. It's not closed here, and it's not closed here. Now, in some manuscripts and in some sources, you will find they will either attach it or at the tummy of the cuff, or they will attach it at the top and leave it open. I am showing you the letter I just did at the top is the textbook way of writing for biblical Hebrew. That's what it should look like. Don't be surprised if the letters look slightly different from text to text. That's the other thing that I always have to remind myself and others when studying biblical Hebrew. Much like the English language, you know, we showed you that beautiful Wickliffe Bible, and the writing inside was kind of hard for us to read. It was almost barely legible for us to discern what was being said. We know that not only did the language progress, but the stylized form of letters has progressed as well. So what you're going to encounter, depending on what manuscript you're looking at, You may encounter manuscripts that have a Sephardic influence, a Spanish influence, a Yemenish or Yemenite influence. That will change the ligature. That will change the style of the writing greatly. I don't have it here tonight, but I have a wonderful book that shows the history and development of the Hebrew language from a Phoenician appearance in block letter to some of this very great and wonderful script that is very difficult to read. So depending on your manuscript, and the other gift is once you learn the basics, what we're doing tonight, you will be able to go in and discern in any of these manuscripts, even if they look slightly different, because the basic body of the letter does not change. So this particular letter right here, we're going to write it like this, kof. I'd like to maybe put a little bit of an H there, but it's not kaf, A. It's kof. Like if you were from Germany or Sweden, you were trying to say kof. You were trying to say the English word for cough, but you were saying kof. You open your mouth in a different way. Sounds slightly like loaf. Loaf of bread, loaf, kof. Same sound, all right? So let's write this out for you here. And we have kof, vav, and this final form being an F sound. So I just showed you the final form of this letter that we just encountered. All right, let's do it one more time. One down, one line down, and one around. It does look like a P, but it is not. Number 20. Just a sense of relief that we have it behind us. Number 20. Resh. Now, I'm exaggerating this for your benefit because I want you to distinguish between this letter, resh, which is the equivalent of R, our English letter R, versus the D we first encountered that had that straight, flat angle. But when you get to read some of the books, you will find that this does not have as pretty a curve as I just did, and in fact will look more like this. Very hard to distinguish. So what you're looking for in this particular letter is you're looking for this curve right here. That will tell you I'm an R, I'm not a D. Okay. So, wonderful thing about this word is just the way the letter sounds. Resh is just the way it is. Resh. Resh, Yod. We have this fabulous S here. Resh. Sh. So it would sound Resh. If you really wanted to be fancy, it would maybe carry a Y sound. Resh. And yes, I think I have cleared my throat enough this evening. All right. Now we're going to do the wonderful thing that one of the folks that was traveling with me brought up this particular thing so I can explain it to you, which are the two S's. We're almost to the end of the alphabet. These two S's are these wonderful letters called sin and shin. Now, I say that because they both look the same, and we have one that has the dot here, and we have one that has the dot here. And they both look the same. So they're counted as one letter, number 21. The dots distinguish if it is s as in sin or sh as in shin. And I've said this before, sin comes first and then you get your shins kicked. Just remember that. If you can't remember which one is which, the one that comes in first order is sin. And then think of what happens after you sin. Get your shins kicked. All right, I don't know, it's just something to try and help you remember the difference. Or you could say, once you sin, you fall and you hurt your shins. How's that? All right. So, but somebody asked me a couple of days ago, they were reading a Hebrew grammar book and said, well, the order of the letters was different. They had shin first and sin second. And all I have to tell you is that if you're reading the alphabet, people do get confused. It's a dot. They do get confused. But I'm telling you, gold standard textbooks, including if you were using a lexicon, somewhere around here. Well, we've got the Brown Driver Briggs sitting right here. How convenient. We would go to the end of the book almost. And here we have, at the end of the book, almost to the end of the book, the two, here we go. So, if you're not sure, you can always consult this book because it may have one or two mistakes in it, maybe, but you can just pretend I didn't say that. Here you have sin. I love that. Sin is in the lexicon. Just remember that. All right. So they have, in here, I want you to see this, they have sin as shin, and sin as sin and sin as shin. The dots are reversed. I'm telling you, if you'll get any lexicon, the dots may be reversed, but the letters may be reversed, but the dots are what always throw people off. So sin first, shin, and then I'm going to just do the final letter, and I'll spell out these for you as well. The final letter is tav. And I want you to see it has a straight line, like a D, that angle, but different than the hey, and different than the het. This letter has a leg that's just kind of bent out of shape. So I want you to remember that, because these three letters, sometimes people will get confused and say, well, what about what's happening here? So this is its final form. Let me go to a new page. I want to draw what will happen with this letter. Get you a pencil rather. 3 lines. All right. So I want you to see where the curve occurs. It's about halfway through, if you were using an equidistant line ruled paper, halfway through and then curve to the bottom. So straight line across and down. This letter sometimes takes a dot, a belly button, if you will. All right? So let's spell out the word for you. And I'm going to write it the way you would say it, tav. So you're not saying, it's not tov, but tav. And here we go. T, tav, a, and vav. And in fact, the way it's spelled here would take a dot. Sometimes this letter, as I said, takes a dot. So if you were writing this out, not the best shape I just did for you, the dot would go right in the middle. Let's do that again. Here we go. Kind of fun writing these letters. They're strange letters. That may be a little bit too curvy, a little bit too crazy on the curves. But you get the idea, this being number 22. I just wrote them out differently. So we've gone through the alphabet. This at least gives you the basics of the alphabet. There are no vowels. I have to repeat that. None. Nada. Niet. Okay? So, now that we've covered the alphabet, now that we've covered the letters that take the dots. These dots change the sound of these particular 6 letters. The dot inside these letters is called a dagesh leni. Imagine if that was your name. All right. Need to make it look like a real L. There we go. So there is a rule for this, and simply it is these 6 letters, which they call be, ge, de, ka, fa, te. So beged, kafat. That's how you remember that these are the letters. If you're reading in, and there are plenty of good grammar books, they'll always refer to the beged kafat letters. They're speaking of these 6 letters that take a dot to change their sound or are missing a dot and have a different sound. So we covered these letters already. I just want to make sure that you recognize and see them. And I would also say, as a sidebar, because I don't think we pronounced the last one, dot, T like truck, without dot, sounds like th, as in thin, but it's not quite as breathy. So again, one should keep in mind that I don't know that anybody really knows how to truly pronunciate Hebrew correctly. When I say that, I say that with all due respect, seeing that this language went through some pretty brutal transitions. Specifically, by the time the people were carried away in captivity, and I referenced Nehemiah 8:8 the other night, where it says they had to have someone to read the scroll that was found, and the question of whether or not they were capable of understanding needed someone to interpret what was being read so that they could understand it. Why? Because the language that was once spoken ceased to be as they knew it. That liturgical language, if you will, and the language that was read in the temple, anything that we could classify as a gold standard of what was ceased to be, and Aramaic and the Targums replaced some of that, along with the fact that there were other influences into the Hebrew language at the time of captivity. A whole generation or so grows up, 70 years, and people that don't know the language. A new language is basically on the horizon, not like the language they formerly knew. Imagine, picture yourself in 1066 with the Normans, the invasion where the French language then took over English, and a lot of linguistic challenges to people who could not speak the French that became the lingua franca for the English people. And then many words were left behind by the French that we just basically took on and borrowed and made our own. I don't know why, but that is. And so it is with many other words into the English language. So picture that as what happened to some of the Hebrew concepts from the time of captivity. And much like the progression of the English language that has Old English, Middle English, late or modern English to modern present period, Hebrew has several different periods of evolution as well. So you can't just clump it all together and say, well, this is Hebrew. There is evolution within this language. So that's for those of you that want to go study that. It's not my subject tonight. So we've done the alphabet. We've talked about those 6 letters that are important because they change sounds, called or known as the beget kafat letters. And I will just reiterate, they're called that because b, g, d, k, f, t. So you put them all together and it says beget kafat. It's not a word, but that's how you remember them. And lastly, what I've already covered on this, which are the final forms. We already covered it as we wrote the alphabet. The Kaf taking the long leg, the Mem open in initial and middle positions, but at the final it's closed. The N, the Nun, the same thing. Final position, long. We have the same thing here for Pe or Fe, curved and in the final position, long. And the same thing with Tsadi. Tsadi, curved, final position, long. So that gives you the basic of the alphabet. Now, thank goodness for one of the people that was traveling with me a few days ago, because this is what was brought to my attention. A lot of books that are out there, and there are some great books. As I said, I can't recommend one because where one is good, then it's not good, and where there's a strength somewhere else. But it was brought to my attention that some of the alphabet either is not written the same way or is not pronounced the same way. So what I've given you at least is the beginning of what I call standardized based on what I'm using. You will find, and I will tell you this if you're looking, you will find mistakes, and there's always going to be mistakes. Remember I showed you a mistake in my Bible on spelling where it said, we're supposed to say the son of Nun, I think, and it said noon. There's always going to be mistakes when you're dealing with ink and humans. So just keep that in mind. Don't get dogmatic. You have the foundation of the alphabet, how to write it, how to pronounce it. So next lesson we will tackle the vowels, and I think making it step by step like this will allow everybody to follow along. For those of you who have already learned the alphabet, review.